Art and occultism have always overlapped in many ways. I've always shown interest in occultist symbolism and the religious artwork displayed in the holy buildings that I would have spent time in and around as a child. I have an interesting relationship with religion, more specifically Christianity and the cherry-picking of the Bible. This distrust of religion in my early life fueled what is now an obsession with witchcraft and occultism. A piece I've produced recently is the best example of inspiration from this subject. The altar is a piece that has grown progressively larger throughout the term. It started off as an eye in the middle of the wall dividing the studio. It then became a seraphim, a kind of scary angel found in the Bible. I gradually added more esoteric symbolism and mark making around the drawing until it got much bigger. My work often evolves over time. I recycle pieces, each becoming a new iteration of emotion or experience. More recently, I found inspiration in surrealist artworks, mostly paintings. The work of Leonora Carrington was influenced by mythology, religion, folklore, and indigenous cultures. Carrington studied Oriental religions, witchcraft, and alchemy, and was known to be associated with Max Ernst, an important surrealist of his time. The piece Who Art Thou, White Face was something I was drawn to because of its depiction of a mythical chimera surrounded by other interesting symbolism. When I feel strongly about a piece of work, I'll often try to recreate it in my preferred medium. Typically this consists of ink or acrylic paint. In this instance, I used ink. There's an underlying theme of fertility and deep femininity throughout Carrington's work. I feel this relates to my own work as I explore the female form, the female versus the male gaze, and often themes of betrayal alongside feminine rage. My presentation of form differs depending on the piece. Sometimes I will overly exaggerate the over-sexualized elements of female anatomy, but then present that form with no genitalia or reproductive organs. This began as a subconscious choice, but it's now an active theme in my practice. In contrast to this, I also present forms with beast-like and androgynous features. I find androgynous forms more comforting when making art. They're often perceived as more childlike and innocent, leaving the viewer to make their own story for each of them. Stories and the media, artwork and writing I was consuming as a young child are largely influential even now. The best examples of these are books like Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak, Fungus the Bogeyman by Raymond Briggs, or Tim Burton films like Edward Scissorhands and The Corpse Bride. When I was much younger, I unknowingly began processing large, life-changing events through drawing and painting. I primarily use ink or acrylic paint in my work because of the range of colours and textures that can be achieved when using them. However, I tend to favour the use of ink because of the flow it brings to the artwork and the vibrancy that it holds on the page. I use a dip pen and ink to experiment with mark making. I use mark making as a way of channeling emotion into a page to form shapes or become a recognisable form. These experiments sometimes feature in the background of my work or are hidden as patterns on clothing for different characters. A large majority of the characters I create come from dreams or nightmares that I have experienced in the past. I keep a notebook on the side of my bed to make sure I don't forget anything good. The large majority of my dreams are supposedly caused by anxiety, and I have a lot of dreams about my teeth falling out. When making dream-based work, I try to emulate the chaotic atmosphere that can usually be found in many of the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch. The type of chaos where you're never really sure where to look, but wherever you do look, there's something to see. A lot of my work also features themes from fairy tales and fables or folklore. Lambkin, a current work in progress, is inspired by both The Boy Who Cried Wolf and the reversal of the phrase a wolf in sheep's clothing, with the aim of creating a visual representation of what it feels like to grow up too fast and be drowning in adults when you're only a child. I choose to focus on the darker depiction of characters from folklore, as it feels more authentic. It makes sense that they would be scary, as a way of spreading messages that stop children from doing dangerous things. Another artist that I find is very inspiring is Gustave Doré. His illustrations of Paradise Lost convey emotions such as grief, jealousy, and rage so beautifully, and I find this to be very inspiring in my work. Mythology and varying interpretations of religion have been sources of inspiration for artists for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. I find that the Norse, pagan, Greek, and Egyptian gods, and the mythology that comes with them, are the most inspiring for my work. Paired alongside the many depictions of witches and other mythological creatures that are commonly labelled as evil by many cultures and religions around the world. Surrealism creates room for questions to be asked. With my work, I want to provoke questions from the world about the way it works and why it works the way it does. Much like the way Francisco Goya's work makes me question why he painted so many dead babies and how he painted them so beautifully.